I'm your host, John Vargas. Just to start off with our disclaimer, everything we say and do does not reflect the City of Los Angeles Fire Department's opinions or views. Grablives is separate. So please tune in today on a wonderful episode with Lisa Mercier. She has been on the podcast before. People have loved having her on the podcast. So she is a medium and a Reiki master practitioner who works with firefighters and first responders. She is very, very talented. If you haven't heard past episodes, check them out. But today's episode is really great. I mean, I just got home today from the Palisades Fire. The last 2 days I was there, and man, I was super tired and wrecked. But I wanted to do this episode to start off the new year. So talk a little bit about my experience for the Palisades that day and just kind of the whole shitstorm that's been going on. Everyone blaming and talking trash on politicians, who's right or wrong. In the end, it doesn't matter. What matters is humanity supporting one another. That's what this podcast is designed to do, is for us to support one another, especially first responders, to bring the awareness, to bring the truth to the table so you can evaluate what's true, what's not, and let's fix these issues. Let's move forward and transcend them for the betterment of humanity and for the betterment of those who are serving this country. So please listen in on this fascinating episode. We talk more about spiritual sickness. Now, what is spiritual sickness? What is spirituality? It has nothing to do with religion. We go into it. So check it out. And how does it relate to the fire service? How does it relate to our lives, our families, so forth? So Lisa's become such a good friend. Man, she's so talented, and we can just talk forever. So check it out. Love you guys.
It's time for Grablives.
All right, everyone. Oh, man. Today is crazy. I just got back from the Palisades Fire, and what a time to be alive.
I can't believe that we're doing this.
Yeah.
I can't believe that you're bright-eyed and smiling and wanting to record a podcast after the insanity that's happening in Southern California.
Yeah, I think I feel a bit delusional after a long shift, and I like that energy. It's real vibrant and primal, and it can be really humorous too. Because when we're like super tired after a long shift or a long fire, we all just like sit next to each other and start laughing about the stupidest stuff. It's a really great engagement with your colleagues, So I have that kind of running through me right now, and I know I'm going to crash. I know this afternoon I'm going to crash. I just know myself. So I think right now is the time to just do the podcast episode. Everything's fresh. And I wanted to just, and I think with you, it's different because we can just talk.
Right.
It's not like having a very formal guest on, and I had set up the time for them and all this stuff. That's just not really like that. So it works out.
Good. I'm glad. I was unsure and was like, don't push yourself. Like, you need a break. This is a historical event that you've been working your ass off at, which thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure.
And thank you to everybody that you know and every single firefighter and first responder that's mutual aid and serving the state of California. I'm so grateful. It's terrifying, and we need all of you. So thank you so much for what you do.
Oh, man, this thing was like, I saw it all growing, because I was like probably there like when it first started. And it was cool because I saw like, man, friends from all different mutual aid departments. And I haven't seen these guys in like 10 plus years, You're like, Vargas, what's going on, man? Like, super cool when you go to these big events because you just run into so many people that you just haven't seen in forever. And, it's a good experience when everyone comes together and sets, is set up for this, campaign. It's a campaign fire, but when all else is like in a serious perspective, like this thing grew so fast, so quickly, they had no idea how to prepare. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's so scary because all the techniques and the training and the experience that you guys have kind of doesn't matter when the wind is as insane as it was. It's like okay, good. It's going this direction. We know how to do it. We know our approach. And then all of a sudden the wind direction shifts and you're like, now it's coming back this way. It's just, it's unimaginable. I just can't fathom the experience of being on ground, on site, doing what you do. But it's, even you saying it's kind of like a reunion of buddies that you haven't seen in so long, and then that you're able to bring humor into the situation. That, to me, at least, I get a little bit of relief going, okay, good. Like, they're still human about it. They're not just machines doing their job, but you guys are picking out some of the bright spots in this horrific event of, I'm seeing my buddies and we're making jokes and we're kicking ass all at the same time. So that kind of gives me a little bit of relief in my own system, because I've been super tense and full of anger and sadness and heartbreak and a lot of different feelings. So I'm glad to hear that it's slightly, I don't know if enjoyable is the right word, but
say optimistic.
Okay, there we go. I like that.
I like one of the things you said, like you brought a good point with the wind.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get back to that. But as far as like, I remember there was a time in my life where I was on a fire, like on a brush fire, and I was so miserable. I was just wet, with like soaking and sopping wet from like head to toe in my own sweat because I worked all day, and it was freezing outside. And I remember like that feeling. It was one of the worst feelings I've ever experienced, and it just kept getting colder. And I chose not to be upset about it. Instead, I flipped it around and like laughed about it because everyone felt the same way. It wasn't just me. And so I was like, I got out of my own self-righteousness, and just laughed about it because it sucked, and the best thing to do is to laugh it off. So I think that's like a great perspective to have, because you can be miserable. It sucks, but you do have a choice to choose how you're going to suffer.
Agreed. And I think it's a necessary and highly intelligent coping mechanism to be able to bring humor into a really awful, bleak situation. I think it's not a, joke, and it's not that anyone's making fun of. We are doing this because the alternative is misery. The alternative is sadness. And the alternative is I'm so overtaken by the devastation that I'm frozen and I can't act. And so I think there's this really intelligent part of the brain that's like, yeah, that's true. And also, make a really sick, dark joke about what you're seeing. And, the average everyday person would not understand that and would be horrified by first responders' sense of humor. I happen to like it because I'm a little warped myself, but I think it's...
I like that.
I think it's it's a sign of intelligence, actually, to be able to bring in humor in a very uncomfortable, devastating situation.
Yeah, you have to. It's funny because when people choose to still be miserable, everyone around that person is like, dude, we don't want to be around you. Just go away, because that energy, it'll start, creeping in like a virus into our own field, right? And we don't want some of that. We don't want any of that shit. Take that shit somewhere else.
Yes.
So we do have those people who do come around, and like that way of behaving, it doesn't vibe. We don't like that shit. So take it somewhere else. And I think that does happen.
And isn't that interesting? You even said it. They're bringing that type of energy. It is energy.
Right.
And energy is palpable. So if you are super negative, or you're telling everybody else to button up, we have a job to do, you're bringing in obviously time and a place. Because you can't be laughing and cracking jokes when media's around, and the people whose homes have burned down are there. You can't be doing that, obviously. But amongst yourselves, if there's somebody that's not participating in the levity and trying to hold the energy, at a certain vibration to help support you all in doing your work, you can feel that, and it's suffocating. It's suffocating.
I like the way you said suffocating. It's very true. But and it sucks when you have like a person in leadership being like that, because then like there's a weird collaboration with like, these bugle badges showing you're a supervisor and behaving a certain way to make it known like, this is how I'm going to set the tone for everyone else. And that's what's really annoying, was when you can't do anything about it based on who's in charge. You know what I mean? That's why I think that's what this administrative tug of war, stuff with administrative betrayal and these feelings, right? That comes from a lot of that, based off this pretentious behavior. It just doesn't, just take it somewhere else, you know? And everyone knows who those people are, and like they stay away. It's just like, once that person walks through a crowd of people, we all walk and go the other way. It's like, let's just go somewhere else for a second.
That must just add such a hard dynamic, because it's not just a rogue personality of somebody, you know, a colleague. It's somebody in charge that you're like, oh, this is now becoming like policy or the expectation. And then it's really limiting, because then you can't be yourself. And nobody feels good in their line of work when they feel like they can't bring their own human side into what they do. And the humanness of everybody in every occupation is necessary. And humor is, you know, some people are funnier than others, and let those funny people lead. Let people lead with jokes or lead with, you know, side comments, and in an attempt to raise the energy. But when it's coming from the top, it's really hard, because then it feels like you're stifled. And then you're not motivated, and you don't want to, you know, hang out with your guys while you're fighting fires. It just becomes more of a chore instead of a passion and a profession and a, you know, camaraderie. It's a tough situation.
Yeah, that really weighs me down when I'm stifling my authenticity. Yeah, I remember when I was younger on the job, I would do that to just earn respect and trust. And I just didn't understand, you know, the game. It's really a game. It's all it is. And I didn't understand the rules to the game. So as soon as I started to learn the rules of the game, because this field, you know, it has its own law, and even each station has its own law, and you have to learn laws that are being appropriated for the culture, these subcultures. It's really fascinating once you're living in this field. You know, it really is an energetic field, and you have to like just understand how to, because you guys can get really stuck in it, and they get so involved, you know, with the drama of it all, and you can't do that, because once you do that, it's game over. And fire department drama, oh my god, man, if someone wrote a book or made a story or a soap opera on just fire department drama, I'm sure they have some like Chicago Fire and all these stupid little super weak. I've seen it. I can't watch it. It makes me cringe. I just cannot do it. But in the end, like, so much drama, man. It's just insane. So I did want to talk about what you mentioned, like the wins, right? I'm glad you even recognize like these wins going on for these fires, because it is so true. Like after the fire, I was like going on my phone and like seeing all these like people blaming the politicians, blaming like, hey, the fire hydrants didn't have water, like all this excess bullshit. And man, you know what? If we had all the water from the fire hydrants set up, it doesn't matter. We'd still be pissing in the wind, because this right chemistry of the wind and the topography and just the way the fuels had reached this RH temperature, it's a game over, you know, so it doesn't matter. And so over the years, I've just seen so many brush fires. You know, I travel over the Western United States fighting wildfires, like, you know, just for maybe three seasons. And I've seen it happen, you know, before. It's the same exact chemistry, you know. And the only thing I can relate to this exact incident was when I went to Colorado Springs back in 2012. And that was the same experience. There was like homes just leveled like it was at the Palisades.
Wow.
But the only thing is that it was hot over there. It was like 9,500 degrees outside. It wasn't hot. So I think if it was really hot like that, it would have been worse.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember when because we took a plane to go there, it was that bad. And when we got there, there was a tornado warning.
Jeez.
And we got there, it was like these winds were just like this. I think actually worse. And then, this people were out of homes. It was hundreds of homes just taken out. And these people were so nice and grateful. They were just like cheering on the sides of the roads with signs. And these people were homeless at that time. And all they did was cheer for us every single time we'd go into an assignment.
Wow.
All over the place. And that was like such a great experience. Like we would go to the grocery store and someone would pay for my food or pay for whatever I had. And even we went out to dinner one time and the whole restaurant paid for our dinner. because they were so grateful for us for what we did. Because I remember my crew at that time, we saved a whole town on that side of the hill, which is amazing. That's
Yeah.
one of the coolest things I've done is a saving. Like I remember looking behind me and we worked all day and we saved like hundreds of homes before they would have gotten wrecked, pretty
Wow.
wild.
It's always, I think it's important to recognize in situations like this that people are good. Human beings are good. And I hate that it's a part of our equation that we go through periods of time where we're at each other's throats, we're judgmental, we can't get along. It's all about like who you pray to, who you vote for,
Right.
where you come from. And then you have an awful tragedy like this. And then you really start to see, okay, who gives a shit? These people have
Right.
hearts and they're cheering for me. Their home was just burnt to the ground. They have nothing, but they're giving me water. They're cheering for me. They're paying for my food. Or, I'm being made aware of a lot of incredible human beings that are gathering supplies to donate to victims of the fire and to the firefighters. And it's like last night couldn't sleep because I've been tense for 2 days. I'm feeling all of this. I'm super empathic. So I'm feeling all the energy of everything that's going on. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. It's super upsetting to me. And I'm not even anywhere near the fires. But I'm seeing all these stories of people gathering supplies and sending money, and I'm crying over the human spirit. And I'm being reminded that people are good. And I wish my prayer for society is that we remember this and we don't wait until the next awful thing happens to remind ourselves that everyone is good, that people have the capacity to be kind and to be supportive. And none of that other shit matters. Like we just have to get along. We're doing life together. And I hate that it takes a tragedy. And I hope we're moving the needle and we are evolving in that way so that we're not just gonna, the next news cycle that comes, we're gonna forget about all the devastation. We're gonna forget about the unity that's here. I hope that we can maintain that sense of spirit because it's really beautiful to see.
Yeah, I love zooming out and seeing these different perspectives because when you're in it, like even for me being in the eye of the storm, I zoom out all the time. I'm like looking at this. I'm like, dude, this is like an incineration stage in order for us to rebuild. And I've been through that internally for myself. I know what that feels like. But on a planetary scale, I'll look at things and this is, these are markers for us in order to evolve. It pushes us to awaken to the human spirit and how precious it is. And I think after people don't get caught up in all the tragedy of it, we can see how much support we have as a whole as we come together. But that's what pushes us into this as we come to unify. But in the end, like you're still gonna, and especially in LA, right? You're gonna have more people just griping at all the people in charge per se, right? And in the end, like that doesn't matter. None of that shit matters. So get over it and move past it because the lesson is to unify. The
Right.
lesson is to support one another in the end. And it was really beautiful because when I came back to the station yesterday, so much stuff was donated to the station out of control. Like we had just mounds of food in our kitchen and it was out of control. We actually had to turn people away
Wow.
because we had so much stuff. Like it would go to waste. You know what I mean? And then so people would ask, hey, well, what can we donate and all this stuff? And honestly, it was like, I don't know. And I would tell people like, if you really do want to donate, like things like chapstick, Gold Bond, and like body wash, like good body wash, like those are things that I know when I'm working that I need because it sucks when you don't have those things. Those are like 3 bare essentials that you want. But man, it's truly amazing to see people, they want to give and help and assist. But man, so one of the things was that day I showed up to work and the energy was already erratic. Like I just stepped foot in the station and I had a call right away. And I just had a patient in respiratory arrest. Like it was really intense. And I was like, man, like what's going on today? And, this was like, 5:30 in the morning. And then after that, I ran another call, same thing, respiratory arrest, like patient just dumping, and doing my job. And then after that call, I just felt, I was feeling anxiousness. And it wasn't like anxiousness in a sense. I just felt it. And I was like, what is this? There's a really intense energy coming through. And I was talking to my friend about it. And I was like, dude, I was like feeling a little bit of anxiety. And he was like, oh, really? He's like, what does that feel like to you? And I was like, sometimes I'll actually check in and ask if this is mine. And it wasn't. And so what I think was happening was this vortex of energy started to spin around us, and it was preparing for later in the afternoon for this fire breakout,
Wow.
because it was really rattling my field. And because I'm so sensitive to it, I meditate every day to know what rattles my field, what my field is. And so I'm so attuned to it that I know when something is shifting, there's a big rumbling of the foundation. So I told him, I was like, hey, dude, you remember that anxiety I was telling you about? I think my body was preparing like for what was happening. And he was like, dude, that's pretty interesting. So we had a conversation about it, and he's really open to the conversation about like energetics and what, my gifts are. And that's one of my gifts, is being so aware of my field that I can feel these things. You know what I mean?
I love that you are talking about this, and I am so appreciative of you having that conversation with your colleague and kind of teaching him or walking through with him that our bodies will always inform us of things, but it's up to us to catch those signals. And for me, I will get anxiety surging through my body. And this is something that I talk to a lot of my own clients about is, for the most part, the overwhelming anxiety that people feel is not theirs. Now, I'm never encouraging people to ignore what they're feeling in their body and to not reach out and ask for help. But before we reach for anything external to calm that anxiety, we really owe it to ourselves to ask, is this mine? And then wait for either the feeling to be lifted or for you to get some sort of guidance, whether it's a thought that drops in or you hear something or you just know something in your body. It's generally excess energy that your field, your antenna are picking up on that is constantly informing you about what's happening, what's to come, how you can prepare, whether it's a good event or a bad event. The environment is always going to inform you. And that's why it's like my biggest mission is to help people get back in step with their intuition, because the intuition I think of as like a channel, not just in the middle of our gut telling us what to do or giving us guidance. It's a channel that information drops down through and then informs us through our physical body. And one of the ways that it happens for people is through anxiety. And so I love that you were like, ooh, why am I feeling this so strongly? And you didn't sit with it and go, shit, my anxiety's back. And, kind of shit talk yourself and blame yourself and that negative voice about I should be stronger now, I should be better now. No, that you went right into, is this mine? What is this trying to tell me? And that's what we need to be doing for every single feeling that we have in our body. And our sensitivities too. Sometimes we're more angry in a day. Sometimes we're more depressed in any given day. Sometimes we're sad. Don't just settle with the sadness or the anger. Go, okay, anger, like, why am I extra touchy today? What's going on with me? Or what's in my field that my conscious brain is not yet aware of, but I'm going to just go right into my intuitive state and ask, because those are all informing us of things. It's not the feeling that we're meant to hold. It's the information right behind the feeling. The feelings are, I keep saying this to people, it's coming up all the time. So I think everybody needs to hear this. The feelings are the messengers. It's like, you get a package dropped off at your door and they ring your doorbell and they leave. Well, they're not going to stay with you. The delivery person's not going to stay with you and open that box and tell you what's inside that box. That's up to you. So the feeling, you got to answer that door. You got to go inside of that package and you got to go, what's here for me today? What am I supposed to learn from this? Or what's the wisdom here in this? And that's true. And that can happen. The exchange of intuitive information, once you acknowledge that feeling in your body, can happen really quickly. So it's not like we have to become this like monk or expert level meditator to tap in and receive the information. That happens immediately. And more first responders are empathic and very intuitive than they realize. And that is I see that every day. Every time I work with a first responder, I'm like, do you know how psychic you are? Do you know how intuitive you are? Do you know
For
what an
sure.
expert receiver of energetic information you are? And most people will just chalk it up to training and experience. I'm like,
Right.
yeah, you're great, but you're also this incredible spiritual being that has tremendous skill set in perceiving energy. So I love that. I love that you're attuned to that and aware of that, and that you're sharing that with others, because it'll help ignite that awareness within other people.
Yeah, and it comes with practice. It's not just like I just figured this out willy nilly. It's because I constantly have gained relationship to my body, relationship to myself, my mind, my spirit over time. Now it's been a sharpened skill, to verify for myself. And I know when I first went through that, I felt like I was going crazy. That insanity was letting loose because I didn't understand it. But when you have more understanding, actually learn that it's a skill, just like anything else. And when you learn to sharpen your skills, you just get better at it. So, I think the information is neutral. Just like if you treat everything as neutral information, you actually will not get caught up in it, especially with emotion. Emotion also is neutral. And it can slide the scale between fear and love if you want to like really zoom out on it. And there's the subcategories and brackets of fear and love if you want to go that far into it. But in the end, like fear and love, those two are really essential. And someone had explained, I forget who it was, but they had mentioned like fear is just the absence of love.
Yes.
Fear is actually not a thing. So when you bring love into the fear, it's actually you're bringing love more into something. It's actually the absence of, just like darkness is the absence of light. And so when you bring light into something, you're just illuminating. So when you become the beam of light, you're actually being this beacon. You're exemplifying the skills you have already attuned to and created for yourself to have someone else kind of percolate within themselves that light. And it's really fascinating. The more I've come into this to see what is outside of my field that's pushing out towards other people to feel like they want to change or they want more understanding, and it's just really a simple question and answer process for yourself, So just to kind of get started, those who have not heard about Lisa is a medium, a Reiki practitioner master. And she works with firefighters and police officers with what's Dr. Heather's company again?
So Dr. Heather Williams is the founder of Premier First Responder Psychological Services. So her clinicians provide mental health services for first responders and their families. And I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I hold up the spiritual arm of Premier, and I do a lot of crisis response with her and for her. So we get called out to critical incidents to debrief the first responders, to help them kind of check in with them and kind of help them clear whatever traumatic experience they had on a particular call. And we help them bring meaning to it. We help them kind of, like I said, clear it out of their system, presence it for them, hold the space for them to process it, so that they, in the hope that they don't acquire PTSD, PTSI. We want to kind of check in with people before it gets to that state. And more than half the time that we're debriefing people has nothing to do with the call that they just went on. We're talking about all the other shit that they've dealt with before, and we are happy to do that because we gotta help people move this stuff out of their system so that they're not suffering and they have room in their bodies to then continue with their profession and their passion.
Yeah, and people have asked me, to do more episodes with you. So this has been prompted by the audience.
Awesome.
Where they really loved our conversations and have reached out to me like, hey, dude, I really love that conversation out of Lisa. And I think this next movement, this next chapter with Grablives is going to be a lot of reoccurring guests. That's what I'm foreseeing is like the establishment, the formalities taken over with, right? That's newer guests can have that. And it can seem very, just construct. And I want to get outside of that into just the reality of our humanness with each other and building the relationships. That's what's really valuable. So that's what's kind of looking forward down the road. I'm looking to have Maddie on again.
Oh, good.
Really good dude. I mean, I've become really good friends with him.
He's wonderful.
Yeah.
Man, he's wonderful.
He's awesome. Like he has such like a sweet like realness to him, and he's just let everything go, like as far as like his self-righteousness, he's gotten past that because of his own suffering, and he's willing to be open enough to meet that change. And he's a big dude, like he's giant.
I know. I've had the pleasure of being attending several speaking engagements, workshops, and trainings where I've been a speaker and he's been a speaker, or I've just been in attendance. And every time I see him, and I haven't told this to him in person, but I think he's a light worker.
Mhm.
I think he is absolutely divinely placed and experienced everything that he experienced in order to be a light for other people. And I call those people light workers. He's a healer. He's a helper. He's a divine being. And he's got such an amazing personable connection with everybody that he speaks to. And he's also has this superpower of not feeling shame about what he has gone through in life. And I think that's just the most heroic aspect of his personality, is to not hide the stuff that he's gone through and experienced. And he puts it all out on the table. It completely humanizes him. And it is for the betterment of others. I mean, he's a phenomenal person. Have him back.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
We get excited when we see each other too. Like there's a light that beams up in his eyes, and in myself too, because I think we feel a bit isolated in our gifts, through our suffering in a sense. And we see a bigger picture here, and we are aware of it with around the sharks, that are around like this exploitation through our trauma. You're a firefighter. You went through so much. Let's talk about it. And like, we're outside of that already. We can see these sharks kind of coming through the around, circling around, and seeing like what the truth is. And, I think he's setting up like nonprofits with himself to kind of like forego all that stuff, but super good dude. I mean, I'm super happy. I think he's coming on in about a couple weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. But in the end, like kind of going back to what we kind of started talking about was the spiritual arm is essential, to our experience, and I think everyone is living a spiritual experience, but they don't understand it or realize they are living a spiritual experience. So like, it's just because they don't have the guidance to understand it. Right. So I think having a conversation like this for first responders to realize, hey, you are a spiritual being, right? And it's not religion. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do to who you pray to. It's actually a relationship to self. And the more you establish the groundworks with relationship to self and really have that reflection, that's a spiritual experience. That's spirituality. And I think one of the greatest things is like the warrior spirit within yourself is spirituality. That's the human spirit within you that cannot be broken down in the end, that cannot be beaten down because it's so resilient. And fixate yourself on that with spirituality, and without getting caught up with the pseudo spiritual hippie stuff, right? Like it's not about that. It's about this realization with the self that can really cause a quicker evolution for serving your family, for serving yourself in your career, for serving yourself as a leader. And it really establishes the groundworks for helping other people want to change as well. And that's kind of the ripple effect that it's causing,
Agreed. And we do get really caught up in the language of this stuff. I often joke that I am woo-woo, and that's like my term for all of my spiritual gifts that I was born with and that I practice on a daily basis. But there's so much, I think we're moving in a really good direction, and I've seen it just change in beautiful ways from when I started my practice of mediumship and intuitive readings and Reiki. I have seen a lot of softening and a lot of opening to the subject, but we have to not get so caught up in the words of it all. And, it's not that outrageous to consider ourselves spiritual beings. First of all, we are, but if you're not sure, I mean, think about the miraculous nature of everything that had to take place for you to be born. That's not an accident. I think we don't spend enough time in the sacredness of life and I think spirituality is connection, period. That's what spirituality is how am I connected? What am I connected to? How am I connected to it? What do I want to be connected to? Like, what's my path for more fulfillment? Or, my Emotional health. I am connected to my emotional health, but how am I connected to it? Am I only connected to it in the way that bogs me down and makes me feel guilty or shame, or, and how can I shift that into the hopefulness and the healing aspect of what I've been going through? Spirituality is connection, period. And it's up to us to go on that quest of discovering that for ourselves. And so let's not get caught up on the language of what it is or ascribing it to a certain religion or culture. It is everything. It is your connection in your human body to spirit, to life. And that is, I think it's up to us as individuals to find that within ourselves. And then energetically, we will have a beautiful ripple effect, like you said, on our families, our communities, on our systems, all of that. It's just cosmic connection. And it's up to us to discover that.
Yeah, I love how you bring that up with in reference to connection. Like that is a spiritual way of living, is knowing if you're connected or disconnected. When you're disconnected, come back to center. And that's a muscle you want to kind of exercise. When I come home, I ask myself often, because often I am disconnected because I'm in this other paradigm of, this program I'm in, and I have to come out of it because I need that program to survive in my career. So, but I'm connected in a different way that helps me, connect with the guys at work, connect with my supervisors, I connect with, patients and doing my thing. But when I come home, I can't use that same program to connect to Haley, to connect to Paisley, to connect to people at the grocery store. I have to be kind to people. It's just, you have to know when to shift that, these gears, you got to go back and forth. And that's the more maturity level with connection. And I just, I'll do certain forms of meditation. This is a pretty funny story. So I connect to nature by just listening. I'll sit outside and I try to get at least 15 minutes of sunlight a day, even if the sun's covered by some clouds, because it helps with my circadian rhythm. I get better sleep and I get all these beautiful exposures with sun. And so I'll lay down in like my anti-gravity chair in my backyard, and I'll just lay there. And I go into a connected form of meditation by listening to the rustles of the leaves or the birds chirping. And I noticed I go quicker into a trance state when I do that, when I'm connected to the nature, essentially. And so I was doing that last week. I was so bogged down and tired. I was like, man, I need a reset. That really resets my nervous system, resets my mental, just strenuous activity I've been having. It's a great, awesome activity. So I went outside, did it, and man, I was like in a trance state for, I don't know, I felt like an hour, but it was only 10 minutes.
Wow.
And so I was laying there like just having almost even an out of body experience, and this squirrel jumped onto my chair and I freaked out, and I leaned back and the squirrel like flipped up in the air, catapulted, and I was like balancing on the chair. I didn't fall backwards. I was balancing for at least like 30 seconds.
Wow.
And I thought I was going to fall back, hit my head, but I didn't. So I don't know what happened. It was like some Jedi shit.
That's amazing.
But I freaked out, and this squirrel, like, fucking man, that thing is just, I know that certain squirrel. I've seen him around my ecosystem in my backyard. And he's trying.
He's a regular.
He's trying to kind of establish like, hey, this is my domain. So I think that's what he was doing. But man, that freaked me the fuck out.
That's
it was
hilarious.
crazy.
Squirrels represent, I have this book, it's called Animal Spirit Guides. And I reference it on a regular basis for my own self and then for clients all the time, because our environment will inform us. Everything's a messenger, everything's a teacher. And so oftentimes there is intuitive or guiding information when we have animal encounters or bug encounters or whatever. And squirrels represent preparation. Squirrels represent, now the message can be perceived as scary, so perceive it as how you will, but some people are afraid when they get a squirrel message because it talks about being prepared, being mindful, keeping your head on a swivel to catch anything that may happen that could harm you. But I interpret it as a messenger to help me stay safe and secure in whatever aspect of life I'm stepping into that could rock me, But then I get this little heads up. I get visited by squirrels frequently, and I go, okay, what shit's around the corner now? And I don't dread it. I don't fear it. I just go, okay, how can I prepare? And so I wonder if that squirrel, and that happened before the fires
Yeah.
started. I bet that he was, yes, to establish his territory and like, hey, I want to lay here. I don't want you to take up my space. But also probably informing you of get ready, kind of rest up because you're about to work really hard and you're about to be needed in a really big way. So that's probably what that squirrel was there to teach you.
Interesting. Yeah, I love animal totem messages. I used to have, when I first started meditating, I had animals come to my meditations. And so I had to ask one of my teachers that, hey, why am I having these animals come to me, And he told me, he's like, hey, just look up, Native American animal medicine, whatever animal it is, look up Native American squirrel totem. And you look it up and it gives you this whole layout of what exactly through Native American indigenous teachings, what this animal has represented. Because these indigenous people were connected in such a way where they understood the messages, the teachings, and they trusted it and they valued it. So it was, I've always had animals come to me in a very strange way. So that's really fascinating. And do you pull tarot or do you have like oracle cards?
I do. I'm trained in tarot, but I don't pull tarot. After I got trained, I did like an 8-hour training course on how to read tarot, and I just wasn't drawn to it. I love getting tarot read for myself. I do oracle card readings.
Okay.
So angel cards and then other oracle cards.
Yeah, because I pulled some tarot the other day, and I didn't pull tarot for a very long time, but the cards I pulled were like Temperance and Three of Cups and Death, and then also the Wheel of Fortune.
Good, thank goodness.
So it was a really good reading, and it was funny because I immediately pulled a death card, and I was fearful, like, oh my God, death. But it's funny when you read on what the death card is, it actually is one of the most positive cards in the deck.
Yes. Because
all it's doing is telling you you're ending a cycle, you're ending a chapter, and it's about to start a new one. So it's okay that things might leave your field, things might leave your experience in life because you've completed something here. And it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be negative. We always go, right into negative all the time. And I've been sitting with that for the last 6 to 8 months because, one of my biggest lessons in my life, I know, is being a perfectionist. And this is something I've been chipping away at with one of my teachers. And we've been really trying to harbor in on, what is going on with this perfectionism that I've had my whole life. Because in the end, it's caused a lot of masochistic nature for my growth and seeing that I don't need hard things to grow. And I've instilled this belief system around myself that I do need hard things to grow in order to transform it, in order to elevate myself. When that's a belief system, it's not true. Why do we need hard things in order to see a performance level for ourselves or to see how you're creating your evolution or how you're going to show up? I found that really fascinating, and she illuminated that for me. She said, "Hey, why do you think you need hard things to grow?" And that really started this whole stream of thought. And I think it's true. It's so true because even with my workouts, I would punish myself to think I needed to just exacerbate my energy to perform. And that's not true. If I do a little bit every day, then I will still have the same effect and I won't get burnt out. So I think that's really hard for firefighters. I work in one of the most perfectionistic fire department in LA City. It's like I'm involved in this field, but I try to teach guys like we don't need this hardened nature within us. It actually is stifling us from being more soft and valuable in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What if this just dropped in, so I wanted to ask, what if you create a different relationship or different understanding of your perfectionism trait and make it work for you instead of against you? And so I would say that perfectionism on the job is appropriate.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
consider that, like you said, you have that program where you go to your job, your work, and that's a different program than you run when you're at home. Let the perfectionism flow in the right environment, and then move it over when you're done living in that programmed state, and be more relaxed and in flow and in an abundance mindset, and that I grow through beautiful experiences in this program that I'm tapping into or running at this time. So instead of trying to fully understand where this perfectionism comes from and everything has to be hard in order for me to learn, just move it over. Give it somewhere productive to flourish. And in the scope of your job, perfectionism is an admirable trait, because you know exactly what you need to do and no one's going to get in your way. You're going to achieve that. And that's appropriate.
No, I totally agree. And that's where I shifted from into alchemization, because I can now, since the awareness part is part of the spiritual aspect, right? Self-awareness is one of the spiritual traits of growth, right? And so that's the first thing you need, is just an awareness to something, and that's it. Sometimes that's all you need. So the second part is alchemizing, which is exactly how you're stating it. Like, you can shift it and move it and be more cognizant of it. So that's the way you transform it or transcend it. So I totally get that. And it has to be more of a discipline, I think, because I go straight into unconscious behavior the way I'm running that program, because it's really deep. I've had it since I was a kid. And what's interesting is when I had to interview for LA City, they ask you a question like, what is the worst part about you? I think that's how they word it. I'm paraphrasing it, but I said, I'm a perfectionist. I can do these things and I'm really good at my job, and it can be a double-edged sword. So I thought that was a really good way to answer the interview question.
That is, yeah. No wonder you got hired.
So I've known it for such a long time, and so that's why because I've known it for such a long time, I wanted to get to the bottom of it too, and we really have. And I think it has a lot to do with the way I was raised through religion. And I think that was really what showed up, is because of religion has taught you have to work your way to heaven through good deeds. But the end game is you die, you go to heaven. And all the good deeds you had leads you into entering the pearly gates. That's the belief system. And I've been programmed that way, so it's really tough when you have something just really make an imprint on you like that. You know what I mean? And I think from that perspective, I'm like, wow, that does make sense. And then the guilt sin part of it is where you start to enter the self-punishment part. You know what I mean?
And then it becomes that like endless reality of, I'm going to strive for perfection. I'm going to do all these good deeds. And then if I fail, I'm guilty, I'm sinning, God's going to be mad at me. It's a whole fucking trap. That's just, I'm also a perfectionist. I don't apply it to other people. I do it to myself. And it's like a lifelong soul kind of, I know it's a soul lesson of mine. It's a soul lesson of yours, clearly, if it's a repeated theme of yours. And you're right about the awareness component. And sometimes the awareness of our true nature is the most powerful aspect of our healing, because once we're aware of something, then we can recognize it within ourselves or when it flares up within. And then we have an opportunity to do it slightly different the next time, and then think about it slightly differently the next time. But we do have to, it's appropriate that you're going into the perfectionism. You have to sit in it and you have to discover all the aspects of your life where it doesn't serve you, where it does more harm than good. And then you get to the alchemizing stage where you go, all right, well, clearly this is a part of me. And I don't necessarily have to rid it from my system to be healed. I have to now command it, and I get to assert my own control of it instead of it raging and being kind of uncontrollable within me. And so assigning parts of your life where that aspect of you is helpful and appropriate, run with it, lead with it, and then be self-aware enough to shift out of that in areas of life where it is more harmful than it is helpful. But the awareness component is huge.
Yeah, I think in even doing more conscious work, because in the end, consciousness is the master. It can't hold all the information that we have. If we go back to consciousness, that's truly the next form of your spiritual I guess, way of levitating yourself, but in the end, consciousness will always hold that information. So go to it and ask those questions. If you don't ask questions, you don't get the answers. And I've said that so many times, but it's so true. You have to remember, if you can just focus and fixate on just that one concept, ask questions within yourself. If you don't get the answer right now, if you don't get it, a week from then, you'll eventually get it. And for the most part, you get it right then and there. If you've gathered a connection to yourself, and sometimes it comes in songs and like memories and so forth. So it's pretty interesting the way you start navigating that lifestyle, because it's true connection, going back to the same concept. So I think when I started doing more work with my consciousness, we realized I was spiritually abused.
Mm-hmm.
So I had spiritual sickness from being spiritually abused into thinking and believing these limiting belief systems that hindered me in my own way of understanding spirituality in itself. So we had to go backwards and really work at, okay, this spiritual abuse is really, really big. So let's, because I was basically raised in somewhat of like a cult, and I remember being put into a box as a child because of that. And I was always punished for just being a kid, you know what I mean? And I was so creative and so passionate as a kid that adults didn't like it. So I was, being punished and spanked and all these things. And man, it's rough to have that as a child, and then getting older, and then these behaviors show up in my life to, where is this coming from? Because these behaviors they're coming from somewhere, and I think my spiritual sickness came from actually becoming somewhat of an agnostic, atheist as well, like just like completely just throwing spirituality out the window, when in the end I knew deep down inside I was so connected, and I needed to really face that part of myself. And I think in the end too, like forgiveness and those unconditional love attributes really helped me transcend all that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And that there's a lot of spiritual trauma, spiritual sickness inflicted on people. And again, just the cycle of, I have to be a good person, I can't sin. Now, we're going down this topic, and I need to make it clear. I'm not bashing religion. I think religion for the most part is necessary. I think it's very helpful at keeping people civil and kind, but there is a fine line between putting boxes around people and limiting their spirituality to live by one certain code and not include like the vastness of and the individuality of faith and spirituality. But there is a sickness with the guilt and the shame surrounding I can't sin, or when I do, live my life, I will then, regret it, or I will have, I'll feel guilty and shameful about, a night out drinking, or I don't know, hooking up with somebody. It's like, this is a super traumatizing field for a lot of people. I have my own issues with the Christian church growing up, being told by two different pastors when I was a kid, seeking counsel for my spiritual gifts, being told as like an 11-year-old, you must not have accepted Jesus into your heart. You must not be praying. You're inviting the devil. And I'm like, I'm 10. I don't even know what that means. Or I had a pastor tell me, I was baptized in the Christian church, and I had a pastor tell me once, we might need to rebaptize you. And I was like, well, wait, so are you saying that it doesn't work? Are you saying that it's like not a confirmed practice or like a commitment to God? What about all the other people, thousands, millions of people that have been baptized? Are they at risk too? Like, it was just, there's so much trauma surrounding indoctrination that a lot of us, no matter where you're at in your journey of life, I think it's appropriate to take a look at that. Don't ignore the limiting beliefs surrounding whatever your faith is, whatever your religion is. And I'm not telling anybody to leave their church, but you do yourself a better service of opening your heart and mind to broadening your understanding of God and spirituality and religion, and heal parts of those aspects of self that maybe were wounded or limited as a result of a certain faith or religion.
Yeah, I think when I was a kid, I think I was just like, man, what are these rules? Like,
Yes.
what is going on?
I was always in trouble in Sunday school.
Yeah.
I would raise my hand and ask questions about, because they would say to us, and I remember being like 7, like a little girl, being told by these adults who doesn't get to go to heaven. Like it was a part of a lesson that, God decides like these certain people don't get to go to heaven right after the message of God is love. And I would raise my hand because I was born intuitive. I was a loudmouth. I was bossy, but damn it, I knew what I was talking about as a little kid because I could feel the lies. I could feel the untruths. I could feel that they meant well. I'm not knocking them as individuals. They were teaching from their own limited experience. So, that's okay. But I remember being a little girl, like raising my hand going, it doesn't make sense that God would not accept somebody who, like, I learned what suicide was in Sunday school. First of all, totally inappropriate.
Interesting.
But I learned, that they were teaching us that those that end their own lives don't get to go to heaven right after they were telling us the message that God is love. And I would go, but that doesn't make sense. And then I would get in trouble and my mom would get called out of adult church and I would get in trouble because I was bucking the system. Just so much inconsistency, so much untruth. And it's a mind fuck. It's a mind fuck. And it's part of everybody's growth and development, I think, is to, no matter what sort of you're born into or raised into, we all owe it to ourselves to zoom out from it and try to look at it from I always call it the soul perspective, the bigger picture, the truth of our own soul. What does your soul tell you about what the church is saying, or what your specific religion is saying, or what your family has said? That's well and good, but what does your soul tell you? What does your intuitive channel think about these concepts and these, the divine nature? What does it mean to you? It is an individual experience, and it must be explored from an individual basis. And it's perfectly fine to gather bits and pieces from multiple religions, or talk to your friends about it, talk to your church leaders about it, do the research for yourself, but more importantly, feel into it for yourself and come up with what feels good to you, what works for you, what makes you the most connected to soul, to spirit, to your own self. And that's that's the path that you need to walk down.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, for sure. I think actually studied Zen Buddhism or Mahayana Buddhism when I was probably in my early 20s. And once I started like reading up on, what the Buddha is, all it means is that the awakened one, that's how it's perceived. And the Buddha just really, all he wanted to do was transcend suffering. And it's actually not even a religion. It's a way of thought. It's a way to think about things to not suffer. So in the end, that's what Buddhism is. And that always gravitated me to that concept because it's about liberating the mind. And it really helped me a lot through my own spiritual path to not be bombarded by thought and just to move forward into the true self versus the false self. And I've had a lot of different conversations with different teachers about the false self and the true self, because if you don't differentiate between the false self and true self, then you're going to get really disconnected. Again, the same thing. And I think the false self can come up with so many lies and alternatives and just fearful memories. And that's what gets you caught up into the suffering part. And I think through the Buddhist concept, in Buddhism, there is a map, literally a map of consciousness to where you can transcend suffering. And there is actually these stages where you have to move past to get to the next level, and you'll meet adversity with those moments. And I think it's very similar to what Jesus the Christ had went through, because he had been, tempted by the devil, right? And was in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. And the same with the Buddha. Before he reached enlightenment, he was tempted by 4 demons, of what he explains. And we have taken things so literal, and the way we've transcribed it, that we're like, oh my God, demons, devils. These are manifestations of our own self that we need to face in order to go to the next level of transcendence. And I know when the Buddha was reaching his state of enlightenment, he was inside of the forest for 7 years of isolation. and was going through this fight, this war with himself with these demons. And at some point, he surrendered completely and then reached enlightenment. So through spiritual experience, a lot of times this spiritual sickness can seem like you're working through some dis-ease because you're not at ease with yourself. You have to face that part of yourself in order to move forward. And these parts of us are just screaming at you for help because they want to illuminate the light, right? Bringing in the light into the darkness, because that's all it is, the absence of, in order for it to be transcended, whether it's childhood trauma, whether it's sexual trauma, whether it's spiritual trauma. These things want you to learn. And that's all it's doing. It's talking to you. It's speaking to you, and you're not listening. So I found that within myself is I got more spiritually sick when I didn't listen to myself, because I'm a stubborn motherfucker and I know that within myself. And that's what caused more harm, is when I didn't listen.
Yes. And I think that's true for a lot of people, a lot of people. It's not the experience that we're not meant to suffer by the horrible experiences of life. We're meant to learn from them. And again, unfortunately, it's built into our nature to learn through adversity. That's what you're becoming enlightened on and moving out of, is really understanding that we can learn from everything, not just the lowest of the lows, but we can learn through blessings. We can learn through connection and beauty and love. But it isn't just the shit. We're not here to just experience the shit and be victimized endlessly by it. It's the shit that teaches us. And so that's part of call it enlightenment, or call it transcending the human suffering, or learning about your true nature. I've been having just incredible meditations repeatedly about the phrase I am. Mm-hmm. And it started, I've been constantly, and again, trying to force understanding of that in my own life for years. And of course, that's not how we learn anything. We have to allow understanding to come in. So I've been learning it kind of in stages. And I had this amazing download in a meditation earlier this year, earlier in 2024, about I am and the connection to consciousness, which is, call it Christ consciousness, call it God, love, your own soul. It's all the same. It's all connected. And what was dropping in was however you describe yourself, in all adjectives, all of your traits, it's you that gives it meaning. So I am, I was running through my own life. I am lazy. I am stubborn. I am, and then I was going into, well, how do I define lazy? Or do I define lazy as good or bad? Do I define stubbornness as good or bad? Where does it lie on the spectrum? And it's up to me how I assign meaning to all of those things that I've gone through, or all of my characteristics or my traits. And it's helping me love and change the definition of some of these negative things that I view myself as, into not assigning them as bad, but assigning them as good. Because if I didn't experience bouts of laziness, I wouldn't be me. If I wasn't stubborn, I wouldn't be me. If I didn't come from, the life that I've come from, I wouldn't be me. And so I'm learning more about this concept of I am, and not giving into the negative definition or labeling all of these bad things as bad, or the horrific things that I've been a part of or witnessed or experienced as bad, but as simply just as. And then I get to be the one to assign meaning to those experiences. So I can say that the pastors that told me that, as a little girl, I was inviting the devil, I can still be full of rage and call them names and say, like, shame on you for inflicting such religious trauma on me, and how dare you, and me. Or I can go, yeah, that happened, and have a global understanding that they were informing me based on their level of understanding, and that it wasn't a knock on me, and that I wasn't inviting the devil in, and that I don't need to hold that against somebody, and I don't need to hold that icky, awful, painful abandonment feeling from people in charge. I don't have to hold that negative connotation or association with that in my body anymore. I get to look at that event in my life and go, I needed that. I needed to learn how to really listen to my intuition, in spite of leaders in the church telling me something that my whole body was telling me was not true. I needed that experience so that I could trust my intuition. I needed all of that experience. And so it's all about what is the meaning that we are giving to the experiences that we have had. And it's appropriate to sit in the anger of it, sit in the rage of it, sit in the pain of it, and then move around in that room, sit in a different corner of it. And then what's the feeling that comes in, and what's the interpretation, what's the perspective, and then sit in a different corner of it. What's the meaning? What's the interpretation? How am I growing from this? You get to decide the definition, the meaning, and the outcome of what you've gone through. It isn't just the experience that you're meant to have. It is the meaning that you bring to that experience. That's the purpose of it.
For sure. Well put. Yeah, I love Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
I loved Shakespeare growing up. And Shakespeare had said, nothing is neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so.
Yes.
And to thine own self be true.
Yes.
As night is the day. Thou canst be false to any man.
Yes.
So like Shakespeare is wonderful. He's thrown so many of these little nuggets in like his plays. And man, he really takes it to the core when you start like understanding what he's saying. Like just be true to yourself. And like you really can do no harm or wrong.
Yeah.
And in the end, you hold your own truth. And that truth resonates within deep, deep, deep. And, that I am presence and term. I sent you that book, I Am the Word.
It's on my list of books to read. I haven't read it yet.
It's
on my list.
I think when you read that book, it will show some little blind spots of what you probably might be looking for, or illuminate some stuff, because it's a channeled text by Paul Selig. Wonderful text. And it's probably one of my top 3 favorite books I've ever read, because it speaks on the Christed consciousness. It will go into depth with what that means. And in the end, that book I can condense it to just knowing that the Christed consciousness is dormant within us. And all you have to do is understand how to unlock it. And then it will just permeate through all the cells of your body and just transcend everything, really, truly. And it's a form of unconditional love. And like I was always under the impression that the Buddhahood also is dormant within you. And it's a different frequency. The Buddhahood is to overcome the mind, release you from suffering. And the Christed consciousness is the power of the heart-based consciousness to unlock unconditional love within. And there's like this Kundalini awakening, like the 2 serpents, the feminine and the masculine. I believe those 2 energies, the Buddhahood and the Christed consciousness, those are the 2 serpents that are unlocking this awakening within us.
Wow.
Because we're merging 2 of those. The power of the mind, because the mind is so powerful. We manifest things through our thoughts. And then through the power of our hearts, we're going through emotion, intuition, and transcending things in that way. And having this form of love that can overcome anything. We blend those 2 together. What do you have? An awakened being, and being able to transcend anything in your life and for other people. And I think there's a process of purging out any of those things, belief systems and emotions and memories. Those things have to go. And in order for those things to fully make their transformation within one person. That came to me like maybe a couple of years ago, just that thought. And this is not like anyone else. It doesn't have to be anyone else's truth, but it came to me as like a full form of truth, and I really had this realization with that. I was like, wow, that's really powerful. So my goal in life and in its spiritual form is to merge those 2 powers, those superpowers of understanding how powerful my mind is, but also understanding that I have dominion over my mind. It does not have power over me. And then the power of my heart is something that I can really trust and move forward with in my life through intuition. And to walk in that nature is really tough in my career. So it's a constant practice to remind myself, okay, that's a lie. Throw that thought out there. This is what I'm feeling. Follow that. And without guessing or trying to like constantly think about it, that means I've already gone to the mind. All right, I'm already out of touch. So I move forward more into the feeling of things. And then I can use my mind as more of a tool with that guidance. But man, over time, it's gotten easier because I practiced it like a muscle. Like I'm going to the gym and exercising. I'm using it every day. The hardest part is using that in relationships
Yes.
and using it with, at my home life too, because I'm trying to engage and connect and not get caught up with my own stubbornness and these egotistical things. Because I find my ego really wants to make a fight, make a war,
Mhm.
with relationship
Yeah.
stuff. So I'm really learning the balance with it. It's really hard at times, but it's only hard until I make it hard. So it's only difficult until I make it difficult.
Yeah.
And in the end, I think it becomes more of a sharpened tool in my toolbox, But those two things, as far as spirituality goes, has shown me so much and so much growth, without difficulty.
That's really powerful. And I like how I like how you're using it in your own body, in your own life. I keep getting the message from my own team in spirit, my own higher self, get out of your head and into your body. Because I am an overthinker. I'm a really black and white thinker generally, which is, I often think like, what a confusing body to be born into, where I am this like energetic woman. I can communicate with the dead. I can read living people's energy, but my earthly side is so black and white. Like it's either right or wrong. It's yes or no. I constantly have to force myself to find the gray, and it's a struggle of mine. But the phrase "get out of your head and into your body" helps with the overthinker, and it helps with moving past, kind of being a victim of our thoughts and more in control of our thoughts. Because if you consciously choose to drop the thoughts down or your perception of something down into your body, then you give your physical body an opportunity to feel into those thoughts, to feel into, and I'm not talking heart feel, I'm talking intuitive feel. Let those thoughts or those beliefs run through your body, and then again, inform you of what we like, what we don't like. Ditch what we don't like, purge what's no longer serving you, but you have to feel it in your body first. Live it, integrate it, walk it. Otherwise, we're just stuck in thought. We never get past that barrier of integrating or, pulling down the really good ideas that we have, or the really good perceptions that we've made, or the accurate perceptions that we've made about any given situation or belief system. We have to drop it down into our body. It also has been a wonderful relief to me that when I do find myself thinking about something to death, I now go, oh, drop it down into my body. And I will do I'm very visual, so I will sometimes give my thoughts a certain color, and I will imagine the color kind of moving down my head into my body, or I take several deep breaths, and each time I'm inhaling, I'm drawing that thought down into my body. And it served as such a grounding practice for me, and it helps curb my squirrel brain that wants to think about a thousand different things at once and account for every possible scenario that I might encounter. It's actually been quite relieving, and I find myself less tired, less distracted, less anxious. And then immediately my body will say, get rid of this. This is not yours. You don't have to deal with this. Or, yeah, let's hold on to this for a while. Let's sit with this. Let's meditate on this. Let's process this. This is really informative. This is really good. Go down that path. So dropping the thought of it, the mental aspect of it down into the body really gives us, it's like the anchoring to the necessary things that need to stay in our bodies and in our field.
Did you figure that out just intuitively to do that practice?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It
That's
dropped
cool.
in because I was really nutted up, and I was just like stressed out about multiple things that were happening in my life. And I was like, I can't live like this anymore. Like I'm wrecked. I can't sleep. I'm not fun to be around. I don't want to be in this body. Like I want to bypass all of these circumstances. And I know that's not real. I was plopped into these situations for a reason. And so I want to learn the lesson so I don't have to repeat it. So fine. What do I do? And my team in spirit, I very clearly heard, get out of your head and into your body. And I've been thinking about that phrase for over a year now. And I'm understanding it more and more and more every day. And it's a personal experience of mine, but it's also been an amazing tool to share with clients of mine, because a lot of us are like that. A lot of us are just in the overthinker loop,
Right.
and we suffer as a result of those thoughts. And it's the same thing that you were saying, like I have power over what's going on in my brain. My brain, let it be a master manifester. Let it draw in and call in the desires of my heart, but I won't ever reach that manifesting capability if my mind is cluttered with unnecessary thoughts, unnecessary energy. And so I've been every day. It's part of my practice. Whenever I start to feel it in my body, that phrase pops in, get out of your head and into your body. Whenever I'm stressed, whenever I'm like not a joy to be around and I can't stand it, it's get out of your head and into your body. And it's been really, really helpful.
Yeah. The only reason why I asked that is because I have these experiences where I'm being taught and coached by my own higher self through my different practices. Like when I sit in stillness, I'll get teachings, literal teachings of what to do for my own transformation. Like, and one of them is there's this line that goes down the middle of my body, and I have to focus on that line. And I sit there for about maybe 2 minutes, and all my thoughts immediately go away.
Wow.
And when I fixate on that, just that line, I can just practice it like every day. When I'm just rattled with a bunch of thoughts, I'm exhausted, or if I'm disturbed by something, I go straight into that practice, and immediately my thoughts are blank, completely blank. It helps me go to sleep, helps me just be calm. And I notice when I'm in, and that's all about being in the present moment. But I'll get coached. That's just an example of how throughout time with my practice, that's why your practices are so essential, whether it's meditation or you have something every day you do. And it doesn't have to be like this long, sacrilegious, like, experience that you've labeled it as, or other people have labeled it as. Just it's about knowing yourself and knowing what works for you. And that has been really essential for me because now I'm becoming more mature through my own nature. And it's really, really fascinating the way it comes up like that. And it's just like, it's so simple.
So simple. And it's amazing how the guidance, the information that can come into your field, I often say it's like if somebody were to sit across from you and tell you the story, and it would take 10 minutes, but in an open-minded, open-hearted, open energetic state of being, call it meditation, trance, half wake, half sleep. It's the theta brainwave state, however you want to call it. Information can get downloaded into your awareness in a split second. And if we were to describe it, it would take 10 minutes to talk it all out. There's so much information that I receive in that way, that a lot of people receive in that way. And people that are not connected, people that are not in their intuitive, channel in their energy, their field or their conscious brain will kick it out, will reject it. And so sometimes people think, well, I have to adopt like a 20-minute daily meditation practice. And I always say, no, you don't. You just have to be open enough to not reject it, to not kick it out of your field. I find some of my most profound downloads happen when I'm taking a shower, when I'm vacuuming, when I'm doing the dishes, when I'm going for a walk, sometimes when I'm driving in my car by myself, even if the music's on or a podcast is playing, I zone out during those activities. And man, the stuff that I get, I rarely sit down and do like a 20-minute meditation. I'll do like a quick 5 to 10 minute meditation generally every day. But for the most part, I get some of the most profound guidance when I'm in the throes of a regular life activity. And it's sort of like a mindless task of vacuuming or cleaning or whatever it is. And I'm just so grateful because I know enough now. I've flexed that intuitive spiritual muscle enough that I don't kick it out when it drops in. And it's always so powerful and so profound.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think I'm having a hard time working with, because I'm working with all these people, first responders, right? And I'm having them do the best they can to be open. And that's clearly the key, is openness. When you're closed and you're just rid with toxic chemicals in your body and unprocessed trauma, it's really hard to get to have that open state. And I think that's the block with a lot of members that I'm trying to work with who are in treatment and so forth, is that they're really stuck in their own pit of karma they've created for themselves. And I think it's just really tough to navigate. I'm trying to do the best I can to get them, and even I'm doing Human Garage, like I can't even get them to experience the experience. It's really tough. And so I think you have to do your own inner work through your unprocessed trauma. There's just no way around it. You have to face it no matter what. Like that's what's blocking you from getting to the next point. And we're so fearful on facing the past because it's the truth. but the truth shall set you free in the end. So to get there, you got to do the work no matter what. And there's no way around it. And we try to, get external forces to mitigate those process traumas when that doesn't work.
None of that will work.
No, will not
None
work.
of that will work. I have beef with a lot of like recovery programs and therapeutic tracks of, healing where none of it will work if it's not meaningful and if it's simply external. And a very simple way to think about this is you will not be able to flex that intuitive muscle of yours that everybody has. You and I aren't special because we've studied this. You and I are the way that we are because we have chosen to exercise the muscle of our intuition. So, and every single person is intuitive. We are spiritual first and foremost. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. But if we do not make room in our body to receive the divine guidance, we won't receive it. And so how do we make room in our body? Think of everything that we've gone through, all the trauma, all the shit as energy. That energy has just filled our containers, our shell. It's filled us. And so we have to move that out of our system in order to make room for the purpose of all of that shit, for the wisdom, for the lessons, from all of that garbage that we've gone through. So the best way to make room in our body is to do that emotional work. And I find in my own practice, people either come to me, they're in one of two camps. They are excited about learning about their spiritual gifts. They want to know about their intuition and they start working with me. And then what happens? All of their emotional stuff comes up. And then they get their ass in therapy and they start working on their emotional stuff. And then what happens as a result of that? Their intuition skyrockets. They are in control of their energy. They know how to live life now. Or I get people that are in the throes of therapy, moving out heavy trauma, moving out heavy energy, and all of a sudden they start to have downloads and they don't know what it means and they don't know what it is. So they come to me for the spiritual clarity and the guidance. So that has taught me over the years of doing this that our emotional body is directly connected to our spiritual body. And so we can't work on one without the other. They're both going to ignite or kickstart each other. And so if you're trying to reach people in your profession, the encouragement must start at healing your emotional stuff. Going into whether you come from trauma or you've just had on-the-job trauma, or you're just stuck in anger, or you're stuck in resentment, or whatever it is, do what you need to do to gain insight and clarity as to where that came from, how long you've been holding on to it, go into the purpose and the lesson of it, and watch how the connection into your own self flourishes. It's a beautiful connection, and you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, we've talked about that before, how they work in tandem, and it's so true. And they work, so it's like milk and cookies, or like a Coors Light and a cigarette. You know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
they just go so well together.
One's great,
you know
but
what I
it's
mean?
like extra satisfying to have both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we all have to mitigate like our emotions, and it's so hard for men to do that. I know I'm guilty of it. I had no clue how to get in touch with my emotions. I'm barely truly gaining like a full relationship with my emotions where I can actually cry. And I had not done that my whole life. I've not done that. And I remember I had like this not too long ago. I was just in the shower and I had this realization and I just started busting up laughing hysterically. And Haley's like, "What the fuck are you doing in there?" And then I started crying after. And then it was just like this emotion of the realization of my own suffering. And I was just like, holy shit, this is insane. But I would never been able to feel what I'm truly feeling in that I'm purging and releasing whatever's dormant. And it finally, when you have it release, it is like a breath of fresh air, and we have to get to that point of gaining that mastery of self with our emotions because it's the link, it's the key. And I know for men, it's just really hard. And I get it, man. Like we're just programmed not to use that as a weapon. And it is. And you'll learn as you become more engaged with it, you're not weak. It's actually a tool for you to be more perceptive with yourself and your creative, nurturing nature within yourself. to now be more of assistance, and it's going to improve your life, whether you're single, whether you're married. Your connection will now, if you're single, you're going to bring in someone that's really, really meant for you. And if you're with someone working in a relationship, you'll open up that relationship to really engage, to be more open and vulnerable. And that'll allow like that feminine part of your life to really step into, make you even more masculine and become a protector. And that is true masculinity. And it's been a really, really beautiful way to watch my masculinity transform in itself, because I don't carry the shame and the guilt anymore for having an emotion, but I used to just see it as like I was a pussy for crying.
Yeah.
And I remember I just had this memory the other day, like when I was like 13, this girl like just fucking broke my heart, man. She just chewed me up and spit me out. And I remember like I just looked at her when she chewed me up and spit me out, and I just started just crying. And I went in the bathroom and I was crying in the bathroom stall. All my friends like found me in there, like, "Hey, John, what are you doing?" And like they started like jumping up on the stall, like, "Oh, he's fucking crying," and they started like shaming me. And these are like my best friends.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that moment, because I didn't want to cry after that again. I was like, "Fuck this! I'm not gonna cry anymore." And I was like, but what happened was that moment of getting my heart broken during like the beginning of puberty, like really tested my interactions with women after that, because I was less open, less vulnerable, and I was more so disassociative. And then so I was never really growing. I kept meeting the same type of relationships, the same circumstances. And in the end, it was just this moment in my life where I just didn't understand. But I was being in my truest form in that moment. I didn't realize it. And how sad was that for my friends, to just these little punk rock skater kids, assholes, just like, and that's just what we do as these little brats, hitting puberty, like, but I just remembered how precious when that moment came to me as a memory, how beautiful it was. I was like, wow, that was actually true. Like John, John, I was like in its truest form. I was grieving because I was fucking sad.
Yeah. And you were vulnerable and open with another person, and you had a normal human reaction to that vulnerability and openness, and you got made fun of for it. So that left an imprint
For sure.
in your subconscious. That left an absolute imprint. And then it shaped every relationship moving forward. And I think sometimes people, maybe, I don't know if it's male specific, but it might be that's really common, that you might, if you were not as connected to yourself now, that memory, you wouldn't be aware that just how imprinted that was on you. And so some people think, well, like what I went through is like not a big deal, but it kind of is a big deal, because it's absolutely shaped every single experience that you've had moving forward. I also think too, for men, there is a fear, or there's a stigma about, well, if I somehow start to process my emotions, am I going to fall apart at the next sad thing that I go through? Like, am I going to be so in touch with my emotions that my first reaction is going to be to cry, or my first reaction is going to be, I need to get my ass into therapy and this is an urgent situation. And that's not really the case. Going into what you've gone through in your life gives that version of you an opportunity to see that event to completion, instead of it just kind of running rampant in your mind and in your heart and affecting everything that you've gone through in your life since then. It allows you to go back to that specific event or that specific time period and shore it up. Go back and talk about it and update that experience, update that story. And it doesn't mean that you're going to immediately be a wuss the next sad or traumatic event that you go through. It's actually going to teach you how to process future events that you go through so that you don't carry it more and more. So pull at that thread, pull it until the spool is empty. We really need to do that for ourselves, and we need to help each other do that, because we're just holding on to too much stuff, and we have no room in our energetic bodies to receive divine guidance, to receive spiritual insights. We have no room in our body because our energy is just overtaken by the bad and the hard and the sad things that we've gone through.
Yeah. And it's tough because I changed my perspective in the way I value someone's own leadership, and the way I see boys in my, my field of work act like that, like this, deterring from true masculinity in a way. I just see it as poor leadership and immaturity. And the men who I've come across who are way more open, I have learned to be the best leaders and the best mentors in my life. And it's really been a really, really fascinating way to see who is attuned to that and who I can gravitate towards. And over time, it's just been a process to get to where I'm at. And only through having to face old memories, like just like that memory I had, I was like, man, that's a really beautiful memory. But at the same time, that hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I work with one of my teachers, we go through this process of accepting something. Like you have to accept it. There's no way around it. Whether it's disturbing, whether it's a beautiful memory, accept it. Accept it. And acceptance is also parallel to forgiveness. And so whatever it may be, you're using that acceptance, that forgiveness of self, and you want to replace it with something else. Because that's true alchemy, is when you're replacing it with something new. And so, man, that moment I was like, I'm just going to replace that with just gratitude for what a beautiful experience I was able to have. And then, later get, I guess, confused, really. That's all it was. And I think a lot of people in general are just confused. They just don't understand. And I think if you bring more understanding to things, you get less confused and you get more confident within the self. When you're more confident, more trusting, fear cannot exist any longer within the self. These other, stagnant emotions that are causing you to weigh you down, they can't exist once you start replacing these things, because now you've alchemized it. You can move forward. So I think the guidance with that has been really efficient with understanding like the way of using universal law, the accepting and replacing something. And man, I do that with thoughts as well. And I do it with just different things. It could be anything. And it became a really good practice for me to just navigate my life,
Well, and once you do pull at that thread and you find relief, once you learn that you can feel relief from that event, when you accept it, when you honor that it happened, and you make peace with it, and then you find the meaning and the wisdom and the lessons from it, your body is then encouraged to do that for everything that you've gone through, and it will be ready to help you do that for the next speed bump that you drive over in life. So it creates a really beautiful muscle memory within your own mind and your own body. You learn really quickly, this isn't mine to hold. I don't have to hold this. So instead of holding this, what am I going to learn from this? And then boom, you cycle out of that trauma, and then you're back on track with life. And so, but we never learn how to do that unless we start from someplace. And it's a really beautiful, the body is easily encouraged and coaxed into becoming more and more efficient with emotions and with our experiences. But you will never get there unless you do it. So you gotta do it. You have to face it. You have to go through it to get past it. But the body remembers, and the brain will quickly update itself. And our subconscious always wants stability, always wants sameness. Even if that sameness is unhealthy and not good for us, it's going to constantly seek that out because it doesn't like change. But we have to slowly, gently coax it into accepting a new stability, a new baseline of not holding on to stuff. And not just denying that it happened and pretending like we're like, no, I'm good. I don't have to process it. No, you're just in denial and you're kidding yourself. You have to go into it. But the body, the mind will quickly assist you. When you make that choice to heal, your brain and your body are going to jump on board immediately and lays down this beautiful foundation for muscle memory. And so everything that you might face moving forward, yes, it will be hard, but it will not be as hard as the very first time that you decided to process trauma. It will not be as hard because the body's like, okay, good. We know how to do this. Let's go.
Yeah. I'm kind of bringing it back to the fact that you're talking about body, because that came up for me this last year as well, the year of 2024, because the work I was doing, the spiritual, the emotional work, it really, stuff was showing up in my body that was kind of rear its head and push itself to the surface. Be like, hey, there's something here that the stuff you're doing over here in your head or through your spirituality work you've been doing it needs help. So I've come across this last year just so much tremendous teachers on the body, and I've come across some very talented people to where they're working on my body. And even when I'm getting the work on my body, they press on something, or they're kind of transcending the injury or the imbalance, and I'll have a memory come up or a thought. And it's really fascinating the way that's been working. And I think the last 2 months, I have met very, very talented women who are very good at body work. And it came across just through my friend hit me up like, hey, you got to see this lady. She's very talented. And this lady's like, she works with NFL players, and she does like everything, even energy work. Cause I had her like press on my leg, and I was like, hey, what are you doing? She's like, I'm just clearing something. And I was like, oh shit, she's doing like some energy work on me, you know. And then she does really big work on lymphatic system. And she's super fucking talented. And she snapped my shoulder into place.
Wow.
Because that was one of my issues, is my shoulder has been injured for so long. And it came from just carrying the weight of everyone else and the weight of the world on my shoulders. And over time, it just started crippling me, you know. But I knew the foundation of the reason why, but I needed someone to help me, you know, instead of going through the mundane, like me go get my body cut open and put back together. I just don't believe in that way of a process of healing your body. I think the body can heal itself naturally because it's so intelligent. But having someone who's really knowledgeable and talented to assist you is very essential. So I think this last year, even the Human Garage episode we had, I mean, amazing stuff. That doing those simple practices too has really transformed me to do work on other people now. And when I'm working on other people, I can feel their thoughts come through my mind when I'm doing personal work on them. And it's really, really fascinating the way I'm like, this is not my thought. I was like, this is their thought. And like, I have them, we go through affirmations so they can accept and replace whatever's coming up. You know, like one of them is like, pressing on someone's bladder that holds fear. And so just saying the affirmation, like, hello fear, thank you for protecting me. I'm replacing you with confidence and trust. Like that is super powerful for someone. And a lot of times they'll weep.
Wow.
Because of how much fear they've been holding on in their body, you know. But body work really has shown up, I think, for not just me too, like a lot of other people, because the body needs to transcend it. You know, it's 3-dimensional, you know, density needs to release itself. It's just knocking at your door, you know?
Exactly. And those injuries or those weak spots of our body or the chronic illness, it's not I think it should be interpreted as our body asking us or informing us of what needs to be released, what needs to be let go, what needs to be updated. And so we should change the way that we view injuries or illness or disease is not necessarily the fault of the person, but the body's attempt at getting you into your ideal state. And body work, I'm just so fascinated by, and I'm so happy that it's gaining momentum and credibility. It's been a practice. It's been in existence forever, but it's finally, there's much more understanding of just how much the body holds. And we're updating our relationships with all of our bodies. And I think it's really beautiful. And again, it brings us back into that kind of marvel state of like, we as human beings are so multidimensional. How incredible is it? How miraculous is it that you could have a physical shoulder injury to represent all the unnecessary bullshit that you've been carrying, and that your shoulder is flaring, asking you to release the stuff. It's not yours to hold. That's incredible. Let's start to update our understanding and our relationship with our physical self, because it's just constantly informing us of things that we can do better and things that we can release and, give us hope and optimism and put us on the right path that we need to be on. And then we learn to trust our bodies more, which means we trust our intuition more, which brings us back into our aligned state of mind, body, spirit. So I love the bodywork movement that's happening right now. And I'm so glad that you're a part of that. I think it's great.
Yeah, I think over time, all first responders have some type of chronic pain and have like issues with their body, because it's a very active career. We're tactical athletes, so something's going to come up, so that's a good way to start with people, because people are tired of living in pain. And I think a lot of people are seeing now, like, hey, I'm tired of the way the body has been treated, by just cutting into it, or, taking some type of pill. I think everyone's seeing the truth in that, how it doesn't work. Number one, it doesn't fix the problem. It's actually going to cause more problems.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something I had to face myself with a surgery I had to go backwards with the surgery, and now we have to fix it. So I think over time we have to, we're seeing the truth. And I think that the truth is really permeating and then so these people who are gifted in those ways, whether it's your work, whether it's someone who's working on body work, we're really pushing the envelope on our empowerment through our gifts, to do things through the power of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the real lesson here. And I think that's what we even started with this podcast even talking about. It's like the spirit of humanity is transcending itself to us to see its full form and its true essence. But in the end, trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You got to trust yourself. And then for me, once I started trusting myself, I started meeting people. That's how I met you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have meeting all these different random people. Like it just came across my path. Like, and I was frustrated and just determined at the same time. But that's when the trust was the number one factor, where as long as I trusted, I know something's going to happen where it's going to transcend later down the road. I mean, it may not happen now, but it will. And it's showing my own empowerment where I'm learning to help other people. And I know if someone comes to me, I know who to send them to now.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not this, I can send them to someone else. And I'm sure you've had a lot of people come to
I
you.
have. It's so fun. It's so fun to meet everybody that learns about me through this podcast. And to me, I always love the interconnectedness of humanity, and every time I get sort of an example of like the small world, like you heard me on a podcast and now you're sitting in front of me having a session. I think that's incredible. And that's the power of the human spirit, and that we are all, as cheesy as this sounds, we're all in this together. And so we should let our guard down and open ourselves up to the gifts of each other, because we are all here with really powerful gifts. And I learn a lot from you. You learn a lot from me, and that's why this works, because I'm open to how you teach me. You're open to how I teach you. I learn from my clients every day. I'm not just the expert, but I'm also there as a human, absorbing little nuggets from my client sessions, going, "Oh, I'm going to log that away because I really needed that too." And that's what we're here to do, is just dance with each other, mingle with each other, learn from each other. Where I might bring up the spiritual arm of something, I might meet somebody that's really good with, something physical that I need help with, or creativity or other aspects. Everybody has their gifts. And so that's another reason why we should all be healing, is so that we can be able to share and receive gifts from one another, excuse me. But really, again, the path to doing that is going inward and removing the stuff that is no longer in harmony with who you are and who you want to grow into. You have to heal it. Give yourself that love. Give yourself that attention. You're not stronger necessarily than the shit that you've gone through, and it's okay to admit that and step into power in a much different way than you ever have before. And the way that you do that is by going back and facing all of those things. And it's safe to do so. It's safe to do it. One thing I love to remind people of is, especially when we go back to hard memories and talk about traumas, it's remind yourself, be present in your body, be in the present moment, remind yourself constantly, that was then, this is now, I am safe now. I give myself so much love and grace and credit for living the life that I'm living in spite of everything that I've gone through. I am stronger now. I am wiser now. It's safe for me to go back and visit those things and gain strength, gain self-appreciation, gain self-love and confidence in those healing practices. And you'll come out the other side just so deeply connected to self and proud of self that it's a really beautiful, freeing place to be.
Hell yeah. I'm going to close on that one.
All right.
I'm going to link up Lisa's contact information when I post the episode. So you can just press the link and then you'll get connected to her if you're interested. And if you live in the Orange County area or LA County area, you can book a session with her and possibly do some work whatever you want, whatever you choose. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate you for listening, and I love you. Take care.
It's time for Grablives.